Hello and welcome, everyone. I see our numbers going up, so I know you all are getting into the room with us. We're going to wait about 30 seconds to give everyone an opportunity to get into the Zoom room, and then we'll begin.
Welcome. I am Tanya Costin, and our team is excited to share information with you today about the National Early Care and Education Workforce Center's Foundational Technical Assistance Series. Next slide, please. We are so glad that you would join us today. And during this webinar, we want to share information about the framework guiding the Foundational TA Series, the structure, the expectations for participants, as well as additional information about the National ECE Workforce Center. Before we dive into the workshop, we'd like to learn more about who is joining us today. So we are going to launch our first poll. Please select who, as you join us, whether you are at state, community, county, regional, national, program, or other levels. Looks like we have a nice spread of people joining us from all over. I want to thank everyone for participating in that. Looks like we are at like 90%. So we can stop the poll. Thank you for filling that out. So then we're going to go in and take a look. Here are today's objectives for the webinar. As you can see, we want to ensure that the participants understand the 5 policy areas and how that work of the center's framework connects to the foundational series. We also want people to be aware of the approach and the expectations, understanding the structure and the outcomes that they will be learning about and receiving, and mainly and overarching to understand how they can use this information in the context of their own situation. Next slide. Here's our agenda for today. We want to remind everyone the chat feature is turned off, but we do have Q&A. Please drop all questions that you have in the Q&A, and we will do our best to answer all questions. Any questions that are not answered on the webinar, there will be an FAQ sent following the webinar, both via email to those who have registered for today's webinar, as well as will be posted on the National ECE Workforce Center's website. With that, we're going to launch our second poll. And this is really to kind of take a deeper dive to see what sectors are represented here today. We have a lot of participation from Head Start and Early Head Start and childcare, family childcare. So we do appreciate you guys coming out and giving us this information because it helps us learn more about what we need to do for recruitment, but also to ensure that the TA that we are offering is able to be contextualized for those who participate. So thank you for completing the poll. Next slide, please. So before we get started, I wanted to share this message with the attendees as you review the slide, which is essentially notes that the work of the center is owned and not necessarily representative of ACF, as well as this work includes being funded by PDGB5, OHS, OCC, OPRE, as supporting the work because, supporting the work because they are not just funding the work, but they are in fact true partners throughout what we are doing and trying to accomplish. As we refer to our integrated project team, that includes federal staff, other center leadership. We use this broad team approach because of the field and the various delivery systems are necessary for varied perspectives to address the overall issues and to make innovative and sustainable changes for the workforce. Next slide. And with that, I would like to introduce Julie Beeman Jackson, the co-lead of the TA team for our universal strategies. Julie is going to provide an overview of the foundational series for you. Julie?
Thank you, Tanya. And you can go to the next slide, please. At a high level, the goals of the foundational series focus on supporting leaders to use the 5 policy areas of the Early Childhood Workforce Index from the Center for the Study of Child Care Employment to transform policies, practices, and programs for the early care and education workforce. Over the course of this series, participants will learn about effective processes to consider innovations that are tailored to the needs of the workforce. Next slide, please. More specifically, the learning objectives for the series include learning how to use their roles, responsibilities, and influence to make change, analyzing data to identify current strengths, challenges, and gaps, developing approaches to include educator voice into decision-making, and considering new strategies that could be tailored to unique context. Next slide, please. The series will be facilitated by leading experts from the BUILD Initiative, Dr. Sherry Killen-Stewart and Dr. Aisha Ray. In addition to Dr. Killen-Stewart and Dr. Ray, facilitators from the Center for the Study of Child Care Employment will join specific sessions. Next slide, please. As a universal technical assistance strategy, the foundational series is open to anyone who is interested in participating. The series is intended for anyone who wants to leverage their own leadership and role to transform practices, policies, and programs for the early care and education workforce. So as you can see on our slide, we have lots of different types of leaders, from individual leaders, program leaders, community leaders, and state leaders. All are invited to participate in the foundational series. Next slide, please. In terms of expectations for participation, the foundational TA series, Technical Assistance Series, has been intentionally designed as an extended learning opportunity with a specific scope and sequence of learning experiences that build on each other over the course of the series. Participants' learning will be best supported by attending all 6 webinars in the series. Individuals will register for the series as a whole. However, we do recognize that participants may have to miss 1 or 2 webinars over the course of the series. Recordings of each webinar will be available to participants so that they can catch up on the content they missed before joining the next webinar. Next slide, please. The foundational series is comprised of 3 sections, each of which includes 2 webinars for a total of 6 webinars over the course of the series. Throughout the series, participants will be able to use the 5 policy areas in the Early Childhood Workforce Index to identify leadership needs and interests in their state, territory, tribe, and other entity to advance transformative early childhood workforce policies, practices, and programs. And for your reference, the 5 policy areas are listed at the bottom of this slide. So they would be qualifications and educational support, work environment, compensation and financial relief, workforce data, and financial resources.
Thank you, Julie, for sharing that overview of the series. My name is Sandra Ranum, and I am a TA specialist with the National ECE Workforce Center. The participants as Julie shared, in addition to the structure of this series, participants will hear about innovative strategies from the collaborating partners working with the National ECE Workforce Center. And if we can go ahead and move the slide forward, thank you. These partners include All Our Kin, Child Care Services Association, Early Care and Education Pathways to Success, Advanced College, the National Association for Family Child Care, the National Workforce Registry Alliance, P5 Fiscal Strategies, Start Early, and the Donahue Institute. Next slide, please. After each section of the series, participants will have the opportunity to engage with the National ECE Workforce Center's TA specialists and collaborating partners through consultative sessions. These consultative sessions provide an opportunity for participants to explore a problem of practice more deeply with the TA specialists, collaborating partners, and their peers, the other participants, in a group setting. After each webinar, participants will be asked to complete a survey to share information about the focus areas they'd like to explore more deeply, and the themes from those survey responses will inform the structure of these consultative sessions. Next slide. Each webinar in the series will be 90 minutes, and you can see the schedule for each webinar and each of the consultative sessions on this slide. The webinars are on the 4th Monday of each month, except for the month of December. We would be skipping that month. And so they will always start at 11 a.m. Pacific time, which translates to noon Mountain Time, 1 p.m. Central Time, and 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Next slide. During the first section of the series, participants will learn about the origins of the ECE field and how those origins have led to the current issues facing the ECE workforce. Additionally, participants will look at the importance of using data to address these issues. In the first webinar, on the next slide, the first webinar will look closely at historical and root causes, as well as what research tells us about the current state of the workforce and the 5 policy areas of the Workforce Index. Next slide. The second webinar in the first section will dive deeper into the Workforce Index and using multiple sources of data to identify strategies to support the ECE workforce. This will support participants in thinking about what data they have available and what additional data might be useful to solve the problems they need to work on. Next slide. Recognizing that the ECE workforce needs to be directly involved in identifying solutions to the challenges they face, the second section of the series will focus on how to connect with the workforce, build networks, and leverage relationships to move the work forward, while also understanding how each participant can use their unique expertise and role to impact change. Next slide. So the third webinar, the first in this section, will look at how to use data to select who participants should talk to and which communities to engage to be sure cross-system approaches are leveraged in support of the workforce. Next slide. By the fourth webinar, participants will use the content from the first 3 webinars to consider how they might use their own role and authority to make changes in policies, practices, and programs related to the 5 policy areas of the Workforce Index. Participants will begin to design a plan to address the information they gained through their networks and relationships. In the third, yes, thank you, perfect. In the third section of the series, participants will put together their learning across the first 2 sections to develop responsive and tailored strategies in support of the workforce. So we can go 2 slides forward. So if we can be on the one that says webinar 5. Perfect, thank you. Centering the lived experiences of the workforce will be the focus of the 5th webinar as participants think more deeply about examples of innovations and the levers leaders have to make change. And finally, webinar 6, next slide. In this last webinar, participants will use the Workforce Index and their learning across the series to design changes or improvements to policies and/or practices that lead to solutions for the workforce. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Tanya, who will share more about the teams at the Workforce Center.
I'm so gonna need a t-shirt that says, please tell me I'm muted. I want to thank Julie and Sandra for sharing all of those details about the foundational series. Before we take time to answer questions that you may have entered in the Q&A area, which we do encourage you to do, remember the chat feature is turned off. I want to introduce both the leadership and the TA team for the National ECE Workforce Center. In addition to myself, and other members of the leadership include Alena Montoya, supporting research to practice work, and Krishana Lloyd, who is the co-director for the center as well as overseeing research. Next slide. Finally, the most important part of the leadership team to be aware of, as they will be providing you assistance, is the TA team. As you can look across the 9-member team, for each of us are supporting different regions and TA areas. You can see which TA specialist is supporting your region on this map. With that, while you are finding who is in your region, we would like to know what regions are with us today. So if you could please take time to fill out the poll. Everybody, about another 30 seconds. We do seem to have a nice representation across the regions. Please be aware in the follow-up email that you will receive for joining today's webinar, there will be information not only about the slides, but it would also be information about the TA team members and the regions that we are supporting so that you may contact us. I want to thank everybody for responding to that poll. Sharon. So I want to thank you for your responses. Julie and Sandra, are there questions that we can answer that are currently in the Q&A?
The majority of the questions right now are from folks wondering which region they are in and not sure how to respond to the poll. So apologies that the map and the kind of color coding on the slide are difficult to see to help find your region, but we really appreciate you joining us today for the webinar and responding to the poll if you are able to.
So one of the things we'll make sure in the future, and as well as in the follow-up email, that we list what states, territories, tribes are listed in each region. So that'll make it easier for individuals to be able to find them.
There are some additional questions in the chat that we can respond to now. There's a question about how long the webinars are, and the webinars are 90 minutes long. There is another question about what are the qualifications for training participants? Because this is a universal, what we consider to be a universal technical assistance opportunity, it really is open to anyone that is part of the early care and education field. And really, as you are thinking about your sphere of influence and what you can change, you may be a leader at the individual level. Maybe you have your own center. You could be a leader at the program or the state or the community level. All are welcome to participate as part of the Foundational Technical Assistance Series. There is a question, can a state participate in the COP, which is our Communities of Practice, and the Foundational Technical Assistance Series? In terms of logistics, they do not conflict with each other. So theoretically, you could participate in both. Just a word of a consideration is that the communities of practice they're considered our targeted technical assistance. So there may be more involved in terms of possibly follow-up activities that are associated with the communities of practice. That won't be the case for the foundational series. So just to give you that bit of information so that you're aware. But they occur on different dates, so you would be able to participate in both.
Thank you, Julie. I also see that there's a question about if there is an application process to participate in this training series, and there will not be an application process. This training series is available for anyone who's interested in attending. There will be a registration link available very soon on our website, which we'll share. And so all you'll need to do is register for the series.
I see there is a question about what is the cost. One of the slides we'll remember to also put in future webinars. All TA offerings by the National ECE Workforce Center are free.
There is a question. So the TA is completely separate from the COP. So the communities of practice and the foundational series are both considered technical assistance. The foundational series, which you're hearing about today, is considered to be one of our universal technical assistance assistance opportunities. So it's open to everyone. For our communities of practice, there is an application process involved with that. And that is considered one of our targeted technical assistance opportunities, but they're both part of the TA that's being offered by the Workforce Center.
Making sure.
Thank you for submitting all of these questions. We have plenty of time to keep answering questions as you're submitting them. So thank you for putting your questions into the Q&A box.
There was a question about what does ACF stand for, and that stands for the Administration of Children and Families.
There was also a question about, can I invite team members that are not here today? And yes, we would love for you all to spread the word about this technical assistance opportunity. In fact, one of the things we'll share some dates in a bit. We will be repeating this informational webinar in September, and would love if there are folks that you think you would like to have participate in the training series with you, because participating in the series could be really valuable as a team experience. And so we would love for you to share information about the next informational webinar with folks that you think you would like to have participate with you so that they can learn more as well.
If we could move forward with sharing the upcoming dates and other announcements as we continue to make sure we've responded to all questions.
So we will be hosting, again, this webinar, a repeat of this webinar on September 26th. We will also be hosting a couple of technical assistance office hours open to the public for anyone who is interested in learning more about technical assistance from the National ECE Workforce Center broadly, and all of the technical assistance opportunities that are coming up and in the future. So again, those links will be available on our website. And let me go ahead and grab the link to our website and put it in chat now. So I put the link to our website in the chat, and that will be a great place to sign up for our newsletter, as well as checking in periodically. Again, the registration for this TA series will be available on that website soon. We will be hosting another one of these informational webinars, and so the registration for that webinar will also be on that website soon. So be a great website to bookmark. We also are on all the social media channels, so encourage you to follow the National ECE Workforce Center on your social media platforms as well.
Do we want to try to address some more of the questions in the chat?
Yes, I was thinking that. So what are the qualifications for training participants? This is a universal TA offering, so there are no qualifications. It is open all the way down from the individual who may be working from a program level all the way up through a systems level, which we would consider like at a state, territory, tribe leadership level. But we are welcoming all participants. So there is not a training or training qualifications. So for this question, I'll answer in two ways. Someone asked, can we find out who else is in our region? So we will definitely make sure that we send out a map that highlights all the states, territories, and tribes that are in each region across the country, number one. And then when individuals register for this series, we will take time to bring everyone from that particular region as well as that state. There will be an opportunity for you to know if other individuals from your state, territory, or tribe register, as well as just other communities within your region. That will be provided.
And we will be sure to send out the link to the recording of this webinar, as well as the slides. And we can also include, once the registration link for the full TA series is available, we can send it to those who registered for this webinar as well.
So there is a question someone asked that I would love to participate. Do I need to be employed? In one of the applications, it is asked. So for this, no, we are anyone who sees themselves as a part of the ECE workforce. We are encouraging them to come learn more about the workforce, and from a conceptual point of framework, all the way through how do you use educator voice, how do you incorporate feedback loops in your communities, so it is very much an opportunity for people to kind of come and learn and use the information to really sit at other tables, expand other tables of opportunity of conversation and connection to make lasting, sustainable changes in the workforce.
There is a question that somebody states that they work with both family and group childcare educators and will be able to access information for both groups. So this training, this technical assistance series is focused on the full ECE workforce, including both those in family childcare settings and center-based, district-based settings, and really will be pushing the participants to think about the needs of the workforce in their own context. And so whatever that context is for the participant, it will be about supporting them and thinking about what are their own leadership processes that they need to be using to understand and connect with the workforce that they are wanting to support change for. And so it really will be open to whatever that personal context is for each of the participants in the training series. There was also a question about having a conflict for the first communities of practice, and will it be recorded and shared? And while we don't have all of the information for the communities of practice available from the team leading that work today, because those communities of practice are really meant to be places for folks to dive in more deeply, the actual community of practice sessions will not be reported, but we can definitely make sure that we get that question into the community of practice frequently asked questions as well, so that you all can access information specific to that technical assistance opportunity in those documents too.
There was a question. It is my understanding the link for registration will be sent to us. So everyone who registered for this webinar, whether they attended or not, will receive the registration information, and it will also be live on our website. So if you know others who are interested, they will still be able to apply, as well as have an opportunity to attend the additional informational webinar, which will be on September 26th. There's a question about translation services being available. We are working on having the information such as slides and other handouts and information translated. And we've also been looking into ensuring that translation is turned on. So during closed captioning, you would be able to pick a different language for the closed captioning and to be able to see that. So.
There are a couple more questions related to the communities of practice, and I just wanted to encourage folks that had questions about that to consider attending our public TA office hours on September 11th and September 13th. There will be members of both teams, the communities of practice and also for the foundational series, and we'd be able to answer all of your questions about both then.
And also, we are preparing to send out the FAQ from the Community of Practice informational webinar. So for those who registered for that informational session, you will receive that via email, but it will also be posted on our website.
And there was a question asking if we could show the schedule again. So if we can go back to the slide that shows the overview of the schedule of the series. Thank you, Ingrid. There was a question asking for a little bit more information about the consultative sessions. What is the purpose? Who should attend? And those are for the who should attend would be participants who are participating in the full foundational TA series. And the purpose of those is to be a little more open-ended and allow individuals to, again, as I said, there will be a survey that participants will complete to let us know which areas they would like to dive deeper based on the content of the first webinars they've participated in. And then based on that survey, we'll be able to design those consultative sessions for you to be able to dig deeper with other participants, as well as our collaborating partners and TA specialists from the center in the areas that you're more interested in. And so exactly the structure of those will be determined based on what we learn from participants in the series of where they want to go more deeply.
So for an example, as we had highlighted that our collaborating partners who will be participating in the foundational series, showing you innovative practices. Let's say you wanted more information on youth apprenticeships. Say we had a group of people in the consultative session, there will be an opportunity for you to come and ask questions, more in-depth questions of our partner ESEPs. So that would be an example of what would be happening. Or if we had a state who was highlighted as an example and you wanted more information, that would be an opportunity. We could bring them to a consultative session and you could talk to them more a deeper dive on processes and procedures they may have taken in order to bring the promising innovative practice to life. So those are some examples of things that might go on in those consultative sessions. And we did want to remind everyone, since there are lots of questions about community of practices in the chat, please check out the recording on the website. Please be aware of all dates for applications are due August 31st. So please make sure you're aware of that. So by the time we have office hours, the application process will have already been completed. But as we said, you will be receiving an FAQ. You can email email additional questions to the Workforce Center. We will drop the email address in the chat, so you can send questions. And all of the community of practice questions that are in today's chat, we will make sure to cross-reference with the existing FAQ to make sure those questions are answered. But please be aware the deadline for submission of a community of practice, which is separate from the foundational series, is August 31st.
We have a question for the registration link for the repeated informational webinar, and we can share that. I'm putting that in the chat right now. There's a question about if you have to miss one of these sessions, and we totally understand that everyone's busy schedules might make it difficult to attend all 6 webinars, but given that the content really builds on itself across each session, the sessions will be recorded so that folks could watch the recording before joining the next session in the series, so that they still have the content to bring with them to the next session after the one that they missed.
So we want to thank everyone for joining us today. Any questions that were missed during this time of live responses, please be aware we will be completing an FAQ that will be sent out to those who register, as well as being posted on our website. We also will have office hours, so if you feel like the question did not address your contacts, please join us at one of our public office hours so that we will be able to respond to you more appropriately. So once again, we want to thank you for joining us today, learning more about the foundational series, and we look forward to you joining us in the future for more opportunities to benefit the workforce. I want to thank you all for your time.